You may have recently heard of some big changes coming to the real estate industry in the form of some big lawsuits and settlements happening throughout the nation. Today, I want to explain a little bit about what is happening and how that affects us here in Utah specifically. My name is Coon with Powerhouse Real Estate. All right, first let's start with a little bit of background as to what exactly is happening with these lawsuits. So around the country, there are different lawsuits that started popping up specifically from sellers towards real estate brokers, saying that brokers were colluding to keep real estate fees high and keep paying real estate agents too much money. And so that's essentially what's been happening, and brokers have individually been being sued throughout the country in a combined but also individual lawsuits regarding this issue. So with that have come some major issues to our industry, some things that have come to light and things that are needing changes. I'll first say, of course, I am a real estate agent, and I do feel like all of the changes that are coming are going to benefit not only us as agents, but also our clients specifically. And so hang tight, we're gonna get through all of this. I'm gonna explain to you how this affects you as a buyer or seller in Utah in the next year as we see these changes implemented. On March 15th, the NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, reached a settlement. Well, they offered a settlement on these lawsuits. The settlement is over $400 million, and this will protect all real estate agents under these lawsuits. Essentially, they also are offering changes to the industry that will affect the entire nation and how real estate is being done, specifically towards buyers and their agents' commissions. Some of these changes that we're going to see come into play are changes to our buyer agency agreement. Now, as this was all happening, I was a little bit confused because here in Utah, we already have a really great buyer agency agreement, something that we've been using for years. Every buyer I've ever worked with has signed an agreement with me and understood exactly what my role was in their transaction and what I would be getting paid. However, in 39 states across the country, that hasn't been the case. They don't have buyer agreements in place. So essentially, these agents are working for their clients, and there's no form of contract that puts them into an agreement as to what the agent is doing for them and what the agent is going to be getting paid. And so that's really where this is coming to light. So with that being said, here in Utah, we're going to see very minimal hits and changes because we've already been doing these things that other states have not. And so we aren't going to have to see a huge change across the board on how we handle our buyer agency. Before we get into this, I want to give you a quick disclaimer. All of this information that I'm sharing with you today is going to be based on what we know right now. This is an evolving situation. It's something that we're still working through all of the details. The settlement was a huge document, and so we're sorting through how that affects us and how our state specifically is going to handle it. But the information I'm giving you is to the best of my knowledge under the research that I've done and as of what we know right now. So this may change when July rolls around, but just know that as of right now, this is what we know. One of the biggest changes that we're going to see coming is that no longer will sellers be offering a buyer agent commission on the MLS. They will still be able to offer one, so don't misunderstand that. It won't be posted on our MLS system. Previously, and as of right now, we are seeing a buyer agent commission offered on the MLS, and it's actually required for a seller to offer a commission. Last year, they changed it, so it could be $0 offered to the buyer agent, but before that, it was required to offer some form of compensation to the buyer agent. Moving forward, what this is pushing is that no longer will that be open knowledge. It won't be a common thing from home to home. It will be very individualized based on the seller and buyer needs and negotiated that way per transaction. Okay, so I want to go into this and explain to you how this is going to affect you as a buyer or seller. Hopefully this will help you understand a little bit better and put it into maybe some real life situations. So we've already gone over what is happening some of the major changes. Now we're going to talk about specifically here in Utah, how this is going to affect you if you're looking to do a real estate transaction this year. If you are a seller hoping to sell your home this year, as of July, these changes will go into effect. So what this will look like is, as a seller, you will still be able to offer a commission if you would like. So you really have three options. Number one, you can list your home whatever price you'd like or whatever you agree with your agent to list it at, and offer no compensation to the buyer. They'll be required to pay all of their own closing costs, their own agent commissions. That's perfectly fine, and it will be allowed moving forward. The second option that you have is to offer a buyer closing cost option. Instead of offering a commission to the buyer agent, you would then be offering closing cost compensation, any amount that you'd like. Typically, a buyer's closing costs are 2% of the purchase price, and that includes their loan fees and it includes their title fees. Now, on top of that, moving forward, they will also be in agreement with their buyer agent, and they will be required to pay the buyer agent. So that can be some of their closing costs. So you could offer an amount and it would still help them one way or another covering their costs. The third option would be that you can offer a commission to the buyer agent. It just will not be posted on the MLS. It can be posted on individual individual broker pages and websites. We can also offer it on any printed documents that are branded for the broker, as long as it has no MLS affiliation. So that's where we're moving forward, is that MLS can't have any affiliation with the compensation to the buyer's agent. It has to be agreed upon between the listing broker and the buyer broker, and then negotiated kind of behind the scenes as the contracts take place. All right, let's talk about how this is going to affect you as a buyer moving forward. If you're going to be buying a home coming up after July, things are going to change for you. First of all, the biggest change is going to be no longer will you be able to look at homes with an agent without first signing an agreement. We as agents are not allowed to show you a home without having an agreement signed. I shared a video a couple of weeks ago, and it was about what you need to know before you enter into an agreement with an agent. So I would definitely recommend looking back at that if you're thinking of buying, because that will help you understand what those agreements look like and what you would need to know before you get locked in with an agent. Because from now on, you are going to be locking yourself in with an agent a lot sooner than you were previously. Before this is all happening, buyer agreements typically weren't signed until the time we were writing up an offer and getting you under contract. So at that point, you had a good feel for your agent. If you didn't like an agent after seeing a few homes with them, you could choose to use somebody else. So now that is going to change, and their compensation is going to be negotiated right up front. So you want to make sure that you're choosing an agent that you feel comfortable with, that will help you get the best deal and reach your goals that you have, and that will take good care of you. Before you enter into that agreement, check all of that out and make sure that you feel good about it. So let's talk about your options that you have now that you're under contract with an agent, you've seen some homes, and you're writing offers. Because the seller may not be offering a buyer agent commission, it's going to be really case by case and how each home is offered. So you will either have a seller offering a compensation for your closing costs. Your closing costs, like I mentioned before, are about 2% of the purchase price. This includes your loan fees and title fees that are required. And so that will be something that you'll be required to pay. And in some cases, the seller has been paying those based on negotiations of contracts, as we've seen our market slow down over the last year. But depending on the market, that will be something that will sometimes be offered and sometimes not. And so that's something to keep in mind and something to ask your agent when you're looking at homes. What is the seller offering? Because that will help you understand the offer that you need to write. You can either take what the seller's offering, so whether they're offering the closing costs option, you just write the offer just like they're offering. If they're offering a buyer agent commission, then the commission is taken care of. Now, if your commission agreement before, let's say you entered into a contract with an agent and they're charging you a 3% commission to help you purchase a home. If the seller's only offering a 2% commission, then you will still be required to cover that extra 1% because you are in the agreement with the agent. So the seller can cover all of it or some of it. And so that's something that you need to remember as well and make sure you understand as you go into an offer. If you choose to just take what the seller is offering, then the offer will just be written up just as it is stated in the listing and how it's been negotiated with the agents. You can also further negotiate. So if the seller is choosing not to offer any compensation in closing costs or in buyer agent commissions, you can still ask for those things. So you could write an offer and say, we're offering this amount and we want you to pay X number of dollars towards our closing costs or towards our agent commissions. So this is where having a good agent that can negotiate well for you is going to be really important. And then also just being flexible and understanding that every home is going to be different. Right now, it's pretty much a standard that your agent is going to be paid in the purchase price. It's pretty rare that I have to mention, hey, they're not really offering enough of a commission or a commission at all. That's all going to change, and these are going to be common conversations you're going to be having as you choose to write offers on properties. It's also going to change as the market changes. As I mentioned before, there's different phases of the market. Sometimes it's really easy to get sellers to offer things towards your closing costs or commissions because homes are harder to sell. When we hit our peaks of the market, like our spring hot market, it's going to be a little bit harder when you're in multiple offer situations. Some buyers may be fine to pay all of that themselves. And so then it's going to be harder for you to compete if you're asking for those things to be covered for you. So just keep that in mind. It's just going to be one more part of your negotiations as we start to write offers and get into purchasing your next home. A couple of question and answer on this. One thing that I keep getting is, number one, do we think that buyer agents are going to disappear? These are some of the big headlines of agents are distraught over this new settlement and all of this. I do not believe so. I feel that buyer agency will always be important. Think about a divorce situation. You have two different parties that are trying to come to terms with an agreement, and obviously they both have different perspectives that need to be acknowledged. And in some cases, those two parties can come together and cooperate and be civil and come to an agreement without a lot of help. In other times, you need some help, and those parties just cannot agree. And with that, I do feel like as a buyer, you're putting so much money into this transaction. And so we want to make sure that you're really maximizing the opportunity that you have and getting the very best deal and just making sure that you're taken care of in the transaction. So I don't feel like buyer agency will ever go away. Do I feel like some people may choose to opt out of using a buyer's agent? Of course, I do feel like that probably will be the case. But I do feel like there still will be plenty of people that will see the value in using an agent and will appreciate what a buyer's agent has to bring to the table. Another question that I keep getting asked is, why doesn't a buyer just go straight to the listing agent and ask to see the house and use their agent to eliminate the buyer agent cost? This is definitely an option that you have as a buyer. Never have you ever been required to use an agent to help you purchase a home. It was easy when it was just offered as part of the transaction for them to be paid. Now you'll have to think about it a little bit more and understand the value of it. But you definitely can just go straight to the listing agent and choose to, you have three options with this one. You can either have them represent you and be a limited agent. The seller would have to agree on this before that can happen, but it definitely is possible. It becomes a little bit tricky because they can't be as transparent as a normal agent because they're representing both sides. You can choose to have no representation at all, which puts you at a bit of a disadvantage because if the seller has an agent that's experienced, you are coming in with little or no experience in the real estate industry and negotiations, or you can bring your own agent to the table. So those are your options that you have as a buyer moving forward. You definitely can go straight to the listing agent and eliminate that cost. But it's just like the situation with the divorce scenario I mentioned before. Having one person trying to mediate both sides can become a little bit complicated if any problems arise. If you have a buyer's agent, they are solely there to represent you and make sure that you are 100% taken care of. I hope that this helps ease some of your worries and questions that you have going into this new change that we have happening in our industry. It's going to be a little bit bumpy. We're going to have to see some things happen and really just see it play out before we can give you a ton of information on how it's impacting the market, because as with anything, we kind of just have to see how everyone reacts and what ends up happening. So if you have any other questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to answer your questions and help you understand this a little bit better. My name is Megan Coon with Powerhouse Real Estate.